Hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to May. May was the month that I decided to try out Romantasy. I know, it's like all over booktube, it's all over the book world right now. So I tried it and it was like, it was okay. It was okay. I mean, granted, I had like one standout book, which I will talk about, that I just loved, and everything else was like, it was okay. So let's just get into it because I actually read 8 books in the month of May. I had a number of 5 stars as well as a DNF. But let's just hop into it all because I have lots of thoughts and opinions on the books I read in May. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back, all the things. So this is my May wrap-up video where I just chat through all 8 books that I read in May. 8 is again kind of a high number for me. I typically read 5-ish books a month, but I've been having a really good spring. I think it's because I've just been letting myself read whatever I want. And this month I got sucked into the hype of Romantasy. So let me just talk through the 3 Romantasy books that I read. We'll just start there, just in case you're curious of my thoughts. I picked this up from Book of the Month. So this is A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. I didn't really like it. And so basically this is about a girl named Freya. It's set kind of in like Norse mythology time frame, if you will. And she has always had this drop of the god's blood in her, but her parents never wanted her to reveal that until one day it gets revealed to everybody. And she becomes what's called a shield maiden. And the plot kind of goes from there. Now my problem with this book is that the plot just could have been better. I feel like the world could have been better. The magic could have been better. All of these things could have been more fleshed out. Instead, it really focused on the romance. I really like the main male love interest, but the female main character, she annoyed me. I couldn't get behind her. She just wasn't consistent. Like, I felt like her motives never made any sense. She did very rash things, and I can handle rash things if they're consistently rash, right? If they have the same motives, but hers just kind of bounced back and forth, back and forth. You never knew why she was making decisions, and then she'd just do these ridiculous things. And on top of that, what probably got me was like her inner monologue. It was, I mean, how do I say this? She was just lusting after this guy the whole time. And I just, 1, I don't like insta love. 2, I don't want to follow somebody who's only thinking about that, which it felt like that's all she was thinking about was this guy. Instead of like the cool world and her new responsibilities and all of these like big things that were happening just weren't as exciting as this man. And maybe that's just me learning that I don't love romance as the main subplot. Like, I do like fantasy with romance because I'm going to show you the next book, which I just loved. I loved this book. So this is Serpents and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. It's part of what's going to be the bigger series called Crowns of Nyaxia, but the first 2 books are the ones I read because they're set in kind of duologies. And it follows 2 of our main characters, Aurea and Rain, and a little bit of a synopsis. So Aurea is human in the vampire world. When she was like 4 or 5, she was rescued by the king of the Nightborn vampires. And she was raised by him in the castle and all of these things. And there's this tournament called the Kajari. And basically at the end of it, whoever wins gets their wish from the goddess Nyaxia. That's the general premise. And so for her, she wishes to be stronger, right? She wishes to not be so scared in this vampire world. And she's pretty tough. Like, she has been raised by this king who has like trained her to try to be able to survive this world. So I liked that. I like that she already kind of had lots of skills in this area. And then she enters this tournament full of vampires. She's clearly the underdog, and it goes from there. Now, I loved that setup. I loved the tournament setup. That worked for me. I felt like what it did is it allowed for high stakes and then low stakes. And that kept the plot moving, but those low stake time frames gave us character development. It gave us ability to get to know our main character as well as Rain, who kind of allies with her in this tournament. And there's a little bit of romance between them. Now, I realized that I like kind of a slow burn romance. I don't like insta love. I don't like when they just kind of are all over each other. I love when it's like reluctant allies, like they are working together. They don't really like each other, but there's a little bit of banter. I just really enjoy that. I felt like it was really good. I felt like the plot progressed really well. I understood her character. Her character made sense. And then the last chunk of pages were just intense and so good. Like, the reveals were so good. I didn't see them coming. So that was this book. So then I immediately was like, okay, I need to read the second book. And I couldn't get a hold of it. Like, it's not available. It's being republished or something like that. The whole series is. So I listened to it on audio, and I'm not sure if that kind of ruined my experience because, well, this was a 5-star. This was like a 2.5, 3-star. I probably should just give it a 2-star for how I feel about it. But the third one, the third book here, so was called Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I will put up a picture right here. And I gave this book 3.5 stars. It was just not what I expected from the second book. Like, okay, the characters, Aurea, Rain, loved them. I still loved them. That's the reason it's a 3.5 is because of the characters. I loved their progression arc. I loved how they had to kind of handle what happened at the end of the first book and into the second book, right? And I loved that part. The rest of it, I felt like kind of fell off for me. It got a little bit boring. The world didn't make as much sense. The magic sure didn't make as much sense. And there was a number of just conveniences that I couldn't get behind. I was like, this doesn't make as much sense. This was just too easy, quote unquote. I mean, nothing in this book was easy. I mean, it was very much vampires, and the vampires were very much portrayed correctly. They were kind of just strong and beautiful and very violent. So that's kind of the side of the vampires we got in this series, which I was fine with. I thought it played out really well. And so I think for me, I was just expecting kind of the same energy from that first one to keep going. And it didn't. I mean, it kind of concluded some things, but it definitely left some things open for the entirety of the series. So like a 2-star, 3-star, 5-star. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to end up with Romantasy. What gets me is, yes, this is adult. It reads a little bit YA, but then like the smut and stuff was very much not YA. But like her character had like the brains of like a 15-year-old. That's how it felt. So I'm not sure if that means I like more like YA fantasy series. I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of jump into that and figure it out because I don't want to go further if adult Romantasy is more like this book, because this I just, no, I didn't like. Okay, enough of that. So that's the Romantasy aspect. Now I'm going to share another book that I read that was 5 stars, 5 stars. I loved this book. I've been reading Abby Jimenez. I don't usually read romance books, but I've read all 3 in this companion series, and this was so good. It was not exactly what I expected though. I mean, because look at this cover. It's called Just for the Summer. These people are playfully running through the lake. I think that is a little deceiving based on what the book is about. I'm okay with it because I loved the book. And there is actually a disclaimer or a trigger warning section at the very beginning of the book, which I think is worth checking out in case like some of these things would be tough, like PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. But the basic plot line is there's these 2 people who find out that each of them have been unlucky in love. Like they are dating someone, and once they break up with that person goes on to find like their soulmate, the love of their life. So they decided to run this experiment just for the summer where they date each other and then break up. And then they'll find their soulmate, right? Obviously, it's a romance, so you kind of expect them to care more about each other. But what I loved about this book is how Abby Jimenez handled just life, like trauma in our past, and how that trauma affects our current everyday life and decisions. And so it's really highlighting 2 flawed people just trying to do their best and trying to be real in a relationship. And so because of that, it resulted in a lot of good like tension, a lot of good like, here's some issues, here's some problems, they seem insurmountable, tension, but not due to miscommunication, which I was so happy about because I also really, really don't like that in romances. And I feel like so far Abby Jimenez doesn't do that. She plays more on just natural situations that can come up in life and how people can handle them and love each other through them and be understanding of each other. So this book, it's very raw, it's very real, and I don't really want to say more than that because I feel like I was surprised at the direction this went, because the back and the synopsis I gave you doesn't really prepare you for that, but it's so worth it. It's so worth the story and just the way it just tugs on your emotions and your heartstrings. And so I highly recommend it. It's a great summer read, but not in the sense of like escapist sort of read, but more like let's feel all the feelings sort of read. So this was really good. Okay, what else did I read? I read the third book in the Hunger Games series. We're reading this as a read-along in Gwen's Patreon. I always link her down below pretty much because I talk about her in every video. But I read Mockingjay, the third book in the Hunger Games series. You guys, I could not remember if I had read these books. I've read them, but I didn't remember enough like about how it ended or what was going on, so that I was equally surprised the second time I read this book. And this is a good book. I gave it 4 stars. I mean, it's really the cast of characters and the overarching plot that are outstanding. The middle part kind of got a little sluggish for me, but I can understand why those parts were necessary. They were kind of part of the character development, part of kind of coming off of the events of the second book, things like that. And then the way this book ended, it's just so good, and I cannot believe I did not remember it. I cannot believe that. But 4 stars for the Mockingjay. It's a classic. It's so good. Okay, and then the other book I got from the library, and this was my DNF. And so this was The Poison Heart. I forgot the author, but I will put the picture up here so you can see it. I DNF'd this book. Now, what this book was is I feel like it was like a middle grade YA. I couldn't quite nail down which side of the line it was on. Book that was a Secret Garden retelling of sorts. It had to do with this main character, I forgot her name, where she had these magical powers that she could not control, and they had to do with growing things, living plants and things like that. Like she could control them. Her emotions resulted in them like growing or like moving towards her, and she's always been trying to fight this and trying to hide it, and it's been really stressful for her in school and things like that. And then she finds out that her like aunt or something left her a house in the middle of nowhere, and her and her parents go and live there for a bit and find out some things about her family that she didn't really realize because she was adopted into her parents' family. And so she learns things about her real family that they did not realize, and maybe that's where her like gift comes from. And it was really interesting when it was doing that. And then there was this added like friend that came into the picture who like added this whole nother plot line that didn't make sense. Like I didn't want it to go that way. I didn't want it to have like magical realism. I did not want that in this book. It didn't make sense to me, and it just kind of made me mad enough that it took me out of the story, and I was like, I don't really even care. I don't want to read it if that's the direction this book is going. So I just stopped. I think I made it like 2/3 of the way through the book, and I was just like, I don't care. I don't want to read it. So I just DNF'd it. I mean, I struggle with middle grade. YA works a little bit better for me than middle grade. So I'm not sure if that was it or if it was just that kind of like a switch in the plot that I just wasn't jiving with. So that was my one DNF. And then I have 2 books that I read for a reading vlog. I was asking the question if I liked Sally Hepworth. I thought I might like her writing, and I found out that I did. And so that was what that vlog was about, was me figuring that out. And I read these 2 books during that vlog. So The Soulmate and The Good Sister. This was 4 stars. This was 5 stars. They're both so good. They're both very character driven. Like this one is about a couple who lives on this cliff, a cliff where people tend to jump. Like it's kind of known for that, and the husband is often trying to talk people off the ledge, if you will, and he's pretty good until one day he's not, and a woman does end up jumping. And then you kind of go back and forth in time figuring out more about that couple's marriage, as well as the woman who jumped, her marriage, and any connections that there might be between the two. It was really good. I feel like it definitely had more of that domestic thriller in the sense of like suspense of like what's happening, what are the connections, and what would I do in her place sort of idea. So it was good. 4 stars, solid. I like her writing style. This book though blew me away. I loved it. One, I really like the main character of Fern, as well as Wally, who is kind of the love interest in this book. And this has to do with 2 sisters. One of them named Rose. Older sister who's always kind of taking care of her little sister Fern. Fern is a little neurodivergent, and Rose has just kind of had some hard things happen. Like she wanted to have a baby, she couldn't have a baby, and Fern decides she wants to pay back her sister by having a baby for her, but she doesn't tell her any of these things, and kind of things start happening. And you realize a lot about their past, about this relationship between the 2 sisters and their mother, a lot of stories about the mother, and how that's affected, especially our main character of Fern, how that's affected her view on herself, her view on others, and kind of her past. And I cannot say any more than that because I do not want to ruin this book. This book was worth it for the twist. If you have not been told what the twist is in this book, read it, because there was inklings of it, but the extent with which the reveal happened, I was just like, I was shocked. I was just really impressed, and it was like a 5-star. I don't often give 5 stars for thrillers, but I don't even know how thriller that is. I feel like it's more literary thriller. I've talked about that all in the vlog, so I'm not going to go into too much more of my thoughts in this video because you can go watch that if you are interested. But you guys, that was my May. It was pretty good. Honestly, I'm surprised. I'm surprised it was such a good month because we were wrapping up school and had a lot of stuff going on. But I was just really enjoying what I was reading, and I am doing really well this year because I feel like this is about the time of the year I usually fall off my reading, and I'm not. I'm just picking up what I want, and it's been a really good time. So I hope you all are well. Let me know down below if you have any thoughts. Have you read these books? What do you think about Romantasy? Because I'm not sure still. I'm still not sure. But if you want to leave an emoji down below, like you made it this far and you don't have anything quite to say, how about leave a sun emoji for just for the summer, because this was such a good book. But anyway, you guys, that's what I have for this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys in the next book video. All right, take care.